Hello and welcome to Our Stories and Ourselves, a podcast about how our minds make stories and stories make us. My name is Kirsty, and in this show, I talk about the stories we tell ourselves about the world, the stories we tell ourselves about history, and about how the way we think shapes these stories and shapes us. So today I have an interview episode with Joe Kassabian, who you probably know of from the Lions Led by Donkeys podcast. And he's also a science fiction writer and what would you call it for hooligans? A non-fiction writer? That's the word I'm looking for.
I suppose, yeah.
So I thought we'd basically talk all things stories. But is there anything you want to plug or tell people about up the top?
Nothing new for me right now. I host a podcast called Lions Led by Donkeys. I have nothing new coming out that I can think of at this time. I'm not the best plug person.
Live show in Glasgow coming up.
Live show in Glasgow
Mhm.
coming up. Tickets are still available, and it will also be live streamed in case you can't make it to Scotland.
Yes, I'm going to be watching that one from Australia. Probably some weird hour.
Ooh, fun.
So should be good though.
Yeah. This will be nice and early.
Yeah. Great way to start the day. So I thought we'd start with the start of your writing career, if that's all right. So you
Yeah.
started off by writing your book, Hooligans of Kandahar, about your deployment in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start off wanting to write a book, or what's the story there?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer from when I was in school and taking creative writing classes, things of that nature. And of course, the good, fine teachers of the Detroit Public School District told me that is a waste of time to not be a writer. I'll never make a living and things of that nature. And to be fair, they're mostly right on that last part.
Yeah.
But it's something I've always wanted to do. And then one thing led to another. I ended up in the Army. And then ended up going to Afghanistan a few times. And I kind of was just keeping it as a diary, which is how it still kind of reads like one. Obviously, the book itself went through a lot of edits and things of that nature to make it somewhat more narrative, to take people's names out of it and whatnot. And eventually, someone saw me doing it while we were in Afghanistan. And they said it was very, very funny.
Of course.
And they said that if I could email it to them when we had internet. And I was like, yeah, sure, fine. Why not? So I do that. He eventually emails it back home.
Oh, right.
And there's this organization called MWR. I was never a member of MWR because I never had a family. But it's something for like families and stuff like that whose loved ones are deployed, for them to organize and talk to each other and see if anybody needs anything, things of that nature. It gets spread through there. So now everybody's wives and parents are reading it.
Oh, God.
And at first I was like, oh, well, I'm getting demoted again because the things I have written in there are quite uncouth, even for the day. And I ended up getting emails back from members of the family saying, this is hilarious. Can we get more of this?
Cool.
So I did. And it ended up being something of like an unofficial newsletter, which somehow I never got in trouble for. For all the things I got in trouble for, that was not one of them.
So apparently that's less bad than liking a Facebook post.
Yeah, which is interesting because I was trash talking the same guy who demoted me for the Facebook post in the book, even the first version of the book. Not him, but someone else featured in said book did eventually threaten me with a lawsuit once the book came out, saying that I had libeled them.
But you didn't name anyone, so...
Exactly. The only person whose name's used it is me. So he would have to out himself as being this person, which is a wonderful defense. And he didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Also, my publisher surprisingly backed me.
Nice.
Eventually, I knew I wanted to get out of the Army. I knew I had something in this weird diary that I had written. And someone who I won't name, I'm still in contact with him to this day. He's a very good friend of mine, told me, this shit is funny. You need to publish it as a book because you're the smart one, which is not true. I was even dumber then than I am now. So I didn't know exactly how to do that. So I had this stream of soldier thoughts
Hmm.
written down into a Word document, and I started shopping it. I edited the shit out of it time and time again, and then started sending it around, and it got rejected so many
Yeah.
times. I legitimately lost track of how many times it got rejected. At one point, because this is like 20 years ago now, almost. Jesus. Yeah, it was a long
Yeah.
time ago. They actually sent rejection letters through the mail,
Wow.
which is wonderful for your, self-worth
Mm.
and everything.
Yeah.
So I did the very healthy thing of gluing all of the rejection letters to the wall around my desk so I could look at them while I wrote.
That doesn't seem motivating.
I don't recommend it. I don't recommend anything that I've ever done to anyone else.
Fair.
Writing a book, don't recommend it. Dealing with agents and everything in traditional publishing, don't recommend it. Creating a cubicle of your own failure, don't recommend that either. But eventually, I found an in somewhere, and it ended up being published. I think the biggest uphill climb from it wasn't necessary. It's like oftentimes people say, well, obviously you had a hard time getting published because it's negative about the war. And
Hmm.
I don't think that was it. I just think people don't really want to hear about a whole bunch of teenagers jerking off all the time and like getting drunk and shitting on themselves. Like one reviewer compared it to like the Tucker Max of the military, which made me really upset.
Oh, that's rough.
Um, for a lot of reasons. Like that, you read this book wrong, sir.
Mm.
But at the same, like it's gross. It's a gross
But
book,
let's be honest,
and not because of the war content.
soldiers are gross.
Soldiers are disgusting, and I don't think that's something that most normal people sitting in a publisher's office are necessarily familiar with,
Hmm.
or even most people, even if you have someone in your family who's been a soldier. Like, for example, in my family, my grandfather was a soldier in the U.S. Navy and fought in Korea. So, like, everyone on my mom's side of the family knew a guy that was in the military, but he never talked about it.
Hmm.
He never talked about like 99% of his job being like, oh, what kind of horrible diarrhea do I have today? Or what disgusting thing is my roommate
Yeah.
doing? Because it's 99% of what you do.
Yeah.
But that's not the stories that people want to hear.
Mm.
Occasionally, there's very good books written that do depict that, but it's more of like a slice of a larger whole where that's the majority of the hooligans. It's like it's disgusting.
Yeah. To come back to something you said in your words, that you were stupider then than you are now, and that the majority of the book is disgusting.
For sure.
You recently revisited it to do the audiobook for your podcast patrons, and there were a few
Mhm.
editor's notes.
Yes.
What was it like to go back to it after that time?
Oh, it was bad. I mean, to say nothing of the quality of writing, I certainly think I'm a better writer now.
Mhm.
Now that I've been writing for so many years since then. I was just I was a confused and angry young man. And I mean, I think I was writing that when I was 21 or 2,
Yeah.
maybe 23. I don't
Mhm.
remember. My views on the war were not incorrect,
Mhm.
I will say, but my way of expressing them was quite wrong.
Yeah.
I had a lot of unguided anger and rage that I was picking up on. Nobody wants a time machine to get into your own mind from that long ago,
Oh God, no.
and I unfortunately have published
Yeah.
one.
That.
I use a lot of language I'm not comfortable with
Mhm.
anymore. I've grown up a lot. Again, I mean, I am a product of my time and my surroundings, like we all are, and that certainly didn't age well. It's not a kind read.
Mm.
It doesn't make me like myself anymore from back then. And in my defense, I didn't like myself back then either. And that I feel like that probably comes
Yeah.
through quite a lot. It's a book of terribly misguided angst and rage,
Mhm.
which I don't know if a lot of authors who end up writing about themselves end up feeling this way, but thumbing through it for the audiobook, I was coming to the conclusion, I'm like, this guy sucks.
That's a tough thing to read about when it's yourself. But I think that also shows that you have grown a lot since then. I mean, if I'd written a book about myself at 21, I'd probably think that she sucks too.
I feel like we all would.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here, I'm 37 now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I see, reading that book again, of course, having my memories and reading the book really helps jog those.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why I was mad and frustrated and feeling a lot of the ways that I was feeling, but it's like somewhere in younger me's head that the wires got crossed a bit, and they didn't quite know how to express themselves in not a disgusting way.
Yeah.
And it does, I think it confuses a lot of people who read it. Not that like my prose is so dense you can't possibly parse it, but a lot of reviewers didn't like it. I mean, it was overwhelmingly reviewed fine.
Yeah.
But the negative reviews that I got were like quite harsh, based solely on like, I can't stand the main character. I'm like, buddy, you have no idea.
Yeah. It's a book about an angry young soldier. I'd be worried if people did like it. And in that seemed a bit harsh. But you know what I mean.
No, it's completely warranted. The people who there were some people who absolutely could see that I was like an angry, confused child, and kind of, gave me the compassion and empathy that I hope anybody would have for someone trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
And then you get like the guy with the upward facing truck selfie who's like, I love this book. It's the nitty gritty of the war. Like, I don't think you got out of it what you should have. Because the book really isn't about the war so much. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm some fucking war hero or anything that was fighting the enemy every day, but that's 99% of every war isn't like that. Most times, it's just a bunch of bored and depressed teenagers rapidly cycling downward in their self-esteem and their mental health and everything else.
Yeah.
I think that was the experience I was trying to show, on top of just why the war itself was criminal in countless ways.
Yeah.
Through my own view of the war, which is admittedly quite small. I was a enlisted man. I was not a general. But yeah, I mean, it is funny seeing reviews saying like, I wanted to like the book, but the main character sucks, which tells me two things. One, I agree. And two, you thought that you were buying like a narrative fiction novel or something. Like, does a memoir have a main character?
Yeah, well, I guess it has a protagonist, but they're not really a character.
There's more to it there. Whatever it is, I don't know.
All of my theory stuff is completely failing me today, but that's all right. Was there stuff that you attempted to cut when you revisited it?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of things I just didn't feel comfortable saying aloud.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. And the book is still in print, unedited. It's not because I don't want people to read it.
Yeah.
It's because that I myself, speaking with my voice and speaking for myself in my early 20s, I did not want to repeat those words anymore. Or, the words of others. Like, I just don't feel comfortable saying those words anymore. Nor should anybody, for that matter. This was from a long time ago. That doesn't make it okay, but it was acceptable in the world that book was written in, which is a bad world that shouldn't exist.
Yeah. And I guess, with it still being in print, it wasn't like you were censoring your own history.
No, of course not. It's still out there. You can still get it exactly how it's always been. The only thing that happened was the cover art got changed due to some legal shit, which I cannot legally talk about thanks to a contract that I signed. But the cover had to be changed at one point. But the book is the same it's been since day one, even with people threatening me with lawsuits and whatever. I kind of be-rabbited myself in this situation. You can't say anything worse about me than I said about myself in that book.
Yeah. So after you finished that book, and you got it out there. You started writing fiction first, or did you start the podcast first?
Actually, I don't remember. I think it was just about the same time.
Mhm.
I think that was kind of because the whole time this is happening, of course, being a writer, as successful as The Hooligans was as a book, and it was surprisingly successful, I still had a day job.
Yeah.
And I think I started the podcast first. Nope, actually, I have a vivid memory. I was working a really shitty job at the time,
Mhm.
and I was working on a manuscript. The podcast started after that.
All right. Yeah.
The book, I think, got published around the same
Mhm.
time, but I was working on it pretty shortly after Hooligans took off.
Yeah.
Because in the ultimate catch-22 of publishing, it's a lot easier to publish your second book. Not that ended up being entirely true for me,
Mhm.
but it was, it's easier to pitch science fiction than it is a military memoir.
Yeah.
So that was quite of a fast process. Even the writing it was quite fast. I think a lot of it had to do with it was fun to write about something that wasn't me.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of fun with it. It didn't do as great, admittedly, but that's okay. Nothing ever it's going to be hard to match Hooligans.
Yeah.
Admittedly, none of my books have ever been even remotely as successful. I think it's just because military memoirs, they sell very easily.
Yeah. And I think I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think there's possibly fewer out there.
Yeah, I mean, there was a flood of them for a little while.
Yeah.
And admittedly, they were all pretty much the same.
Mhm.
Of course, there are some outliers, namely like Marcus Luttrell's comes to mind because it's just a lie.
Mm.
Same goes for the American Sniper guy.
Mhm.
But they came in two forms, and that was like evangelical guy finds Jesus, but also he's a troop, therefore he sells a lot of books
Mhm.
through where like the New York Times up having putting a symbol next to the book's name because it's been purchased in bulk by some weird political factions.
Yeah.
And then there was the Navy SEAL flood that everybody saw, where Navy SEALs constantly wrote books.
Mhm.
So like, unless you wanted the guy saying that, recreating the Crusades in his own mind palace, or the Navy SEAL who's lying about half the shit that's in the book, there wasn't really a third type of memoir coming out.
Yeah.
So I think guys like me who were like, no, I'm a normal fuck up who enlisted because I really didn't want to go to prison like my friends. I'm a shitty soldier. This war sucks. There wasn't really a lot of books like that.
Yeah. Since you mentioned American Sniper, I was actually listening to your bonus episode on the film recently. And
what a masterpiece that is.
yeah. But I did find it quite interesting towards the end of this episode, and it is quite an old episode now, so I don't know if you actually remember what you said.
I absolutely do not know.
Okay. Well, you so you talk about how, yeah, there's a lot of lies in there, but also that there were some stuff where the stuff around him got much worse after he died. He had initially planned to take care of the families of people in his unit that had died and things like that, and then his wife just didn't honor that at all and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
And that the stuff that he talked about doing when he was serving was, was soldier stuff.
I mean, the things that he talks about in his memoir specifically were war crimes.
Yeah.
Like specifically like looting, and stealing things from people's houses and stuff. And I'm not saying that soldiers didn't do those things. I personally never saw anyone in my unit do it. But it's because a lot of that has to do with like unit culture and what's acceptable. Our unit was a bunch of fuck ups, but it mostly went down to getting drunk and fighting one another, and getting in trouble for that. Not like our commanders would never find it acceptable that someone lifted, I think he stole a Game Boy from someone's house or something like that.
Jesus. Yeah.
I mean, that is fucked up. He does a lot of other shit that's fucked up. And he's like, a lot of the things in the book that people remember just never happened.
Yeah.
Like, of course, his shooting looters story.
Oh, God, yeah.
From Hurricane Katrina never happened. The story about him killing a guy, I think he was trying to carjack him and something like that, that never happened.
Yeah.
It's full of shit because Chris Kyle was a fucking liar.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, the foundation or whatever ended up not giving money like he said he would.
Yeah.
That's not really that surprising. Marcus Luttrell did the same thing, but he's still alive. And
Mm.
just like it's an absolute right-wing psycho these days. But in Marcus Luttrell's defense, if Chris Kyle didn't die, he'd be just as crazy as him.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility, because I think one thing you did say in that episode was that, once he died, he couldn't control his own narrative anymore. But at the same time, if he hadn't died, maybe he would have just become a right-wing grifter shitbag, which, given some of the lies and some of the war crimes in the books, a fairly safe bet, I would say.
It all depends on what kind of guy he would have turned into.
Mm.
It's hard to say. I don't know many SEALs like him who ended up getting the book deal and the movie deal and everything, though. The movie did come out after he died, but it started filming before he died. Hence why they kind of spliced in his state funeral in Texas there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to say. I don't know any other Navy SEALs who got that kind of shit lavished upon him and turned out normal.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things that feeds itself as well. Like, enough people say this stuff about you and pay you to have a certain narrative. It's very easy to just keep feeding that.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people. I'm not going to say anything of their character because I don't know them. But like, they got like the Medal of Honor or whatever, and largely just went back to being a normal guy for at least a little bit for some of them. But like Chris Kyle was alive and lying his ass off, like for self-aggrandizement. So I have a feeling if a political actor came calling, he would have more than willing picked up the phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the lies he told about sniping people off the roof and things like that would point in that direction.
Yeah, sniping people on the roof of the fucking Superdome. Like, absolutely insane shit that would only happen in a Netflix movie.
Speaking of Netflix, that's a terrible segue. But I wanted to talk a bit more about your fiction writing, and obviously that it's military sci-fi. So are there things from your experience that kind of feed into it a bit here and there?
Yeah, definitely. I think over the years I've kind of been able to process things a little bit better, especially when it comes to like self-expression, how things kind of linger, little thoughts and feelings and smells and tastes and things like that kind of end up getting put into the stories to make them feel more alive. Not to mention just like the reality of everyday soldiering. I generally don't like to write fantastical science fiction where people are zipping around in power armor and shit like that, because that kind of separates how shitty it is to be just a random dude in a war. I'm not saying that kind of science fiction isn't good or anything. I just don't like it. To really make it feel real, or at least attempt to, the ideas and the feelings of the main characters and things of that nature, I really try to reflect my own experience as much as I can, while also not just repeating myself, so to speak,
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that reality of the things that suck and the things that go wrong and the things that actually you notice in those times really does come through in your writing.
Oh, thank you.
I did want to talk about a couple of, I guess, writing tropes and your take on them from your experience.
Okay.
So I think you've mentioned to me that in a couple of your first drafts, there were characters that you killed off and subsequently resurrected, which is maybe a bit different to the kill your darlings idea of not hanging on to characters just because you like them. But at the same time, I like those characters too, and I'm glad they made it through the story. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I don't like the idea of dodging tropes, so to speak, because everything is a trope.
Yeah.
If you dig far enough, someone did that before you. You're not George Martin. Like, you're not Joe Abercrombie. Deal with it. You got to work with the playing field that you have.
I mean, George Martin's got heaps of tropes in his stuff.
Yeah, of course he does. And not to mention, you can see where he picked up a lot of stuff from Tad Williams, for example. that's just called liking authors
Mhm.
and then being a writer. There's no writer that existed that did not take inspiration from someone else, and that is kind of where tropes come from. And that's not a bad thing. I do like the idea of someone writing them well.
Yeah.
Following things by a safe playbook is just boring.
Mhm.
But, there's been multiple retellings actually quite recently of, King
Mhm.
Arthur stuff, which is about the most tropiest knight bullshit you can possibly consume.
Yeah.
But they do it really well. It's wonderful. So as far as the character that I saved in my first series, that was kind of an accident.
Mhm.
Because when I sold the book, it was not a trilogy.
Ah.
It was just going to be one book.
Mhm.
So I wanted to have a definite ending. I didn't want to leave any, is there going to be a second one or
Mhm.
anything? But then the publisher surprisingly asked me if I wanted to do a series after they read the manuscript. They said this would be really good as a series. Like, what happens next? Well, I certainly have to change the ending
Yeah.
because I wanted the story to be, the main character gets in way over his head and he kind of gets way too much responsibility that he's absolutely not prepared for. And through that, he is
Mhm.
tortured. I didn't want his personal life to be the point of torture,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. Like, I didn't want him to go through that kind of trauma. And I think the reason for that is I was writing that so soon after
Yeah.
Hooligans. And I was still in the, let's call mid processing, where despite all of the bad things that happened to me, and in reality, it could have been much worse. And I'm not saying, oh, woe is me or whatever, but it could have been much
Mhm.
worse. But all the things that happened to me, none of that had anything to do with my personal life.
Yeah.
I couldn't empathize or even write that. I wasn't a good enough writer yet to really write mental anguish from a relationship point of view.
Mhm.
Now I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the opening of your most recent series, I think, that's a really good opening.
Thank you. I really, I have a hard time writing ideas and themes I'm not entirely
Mhm.
familiar with. And by familiar with, I mean, have I drug my ass through this
Yeah.
myself? And that's why I tend to write combat scenes very easily. That's the easiest part of any book that I write. But when it comes interpersonal relationships, I have a much harder time because I haven't had a lot of them. I've had a lot of friendships, sure, but I never really had a career or a lifestyle that lent itself for me to be heartbroken or lose someone that's
Mhm.
close to me. Unfortunately, since I've started writing and now I'm well versed on the topic.
Oh.
So and that has really helped me be able to kind of expand my emotional writing capabilities.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I'm a big dumb baby and I have to feel it to write it.
I don't think that's dumb or babyish. I think that's human.
Maybe. I mean, some people can write psychopathic levels of emotional trauma in their books really well. And they're just like a deeply normal guy. But I think that's where some people are just incredibly good character
Mhm.
writers. Some people are really, really good at Robin Hobb comes to mind as being one of the best character writers of a book I have read recently.
Oh, and she's brutal to her characters.
Exactly. By all accounts, wonderful woman.
Yes, I've been really lucky. I actually met her briefly. She is delightful.
Oh, that's cool. And I don't know what if anything has happened to her in her past or whatever, but I do know that she's just a magnificent character writer.
Mm.
Joe Abercrombie is a magnificent character writer. I think Robin Hobb writes mental anguish
Mhm.
much better. I don't know why. She just can. I don't think that's something I'm necessarily I don't think that's something I necessarily excel at.
Mhm.
I do think I'm getting better with it as I write. But I feel like I'm leaning more into that as I move
Mhm.
on in my career. I think nowadays audiences are also, because back in the day to write, they call it grimdark.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody I just named, to include Joe McCraby, who people say writes grimdark, I don't think what he writes is
Mhm.
grimdark. But people are seeking out darker themes in their media consumption
Yeah.
more often than they used to, in my opinion. And I am becoming, I'm also becoming at the same time more comfortable exploring those themes in my writing.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can pull it off.
Going back to, had two different names as well, didn't it? The Prisoner's Dilemma.
Oh yeah, that whole
Hmm.
drama. That is a very
Yeah.
funny story, and it's an unfortunate story, and
Hmm.
it tells of how publishing works.
Yeah. Or doesn't work. As
Yeah, or it's most of the time doesn't
yeah.
work. It was published through an indie publisher, ran by absolutely amazing people.
Hmm.
The first two books in the series were published through them, and then unfortunately they went out of business.
Yeah.
It didn't make me feel great that it was like my second book through them was the last one that they published.
Oh, rough.
And I was talking to one of the senior editors who's a very good friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh, your book could have won this award, that award, but on the New York Times bestseller, it would not have saved the company. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, that does make me feel better." So then I got stuck with the third book in the series being worked on, but no publisher
Mm.
for it. And one of the problems is a lot of publishers don't want to take a half-done series that's already
Yeah.
been published because they're missing out on the royalties of the first two. So I found a publisher who was willing to take a crack at it, but I had to change the name
All right.
so they could republish it all and under a fresh name and
Mhm.
everything else. So half of my marketing duty was telling people like, "You've already bought the book, don't
Oh,
buy it
no.
again. It's fine." I vividly remember doing that through like my
Mhm.
podcast and things like that. And that company treated me very well. I'm still maybe working with them in the future, but it's just something they did as a business decision as much as I didn't
Yeah.
like it. I understand why.
Mhm. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's why I was getting a little bit confused when I'm making my notes for this. But one thing, you said that it started off as a standalone novel, and I think you can tell that as you're reading it, and as you get to the end of it, like it's satisfying and complete. And it's interesting because I've just finished recording an episode on the hero's journey, which,
Mhm.
as a well, I don't want to get into it now because I've just spent half an hour talking about it. But it does work as a story structure, as one of many
Yeah, of
story
course.
structures. The idea that it's the monomyth and the root of human psychology is nonsense, but
I think that's a bit of a reach. Yeah.
it works as a story structure.
Everybody's entertained by it for the most
Yeah.
part. It's the trope of
Mhm.
all tropes, for sure.
Yeah. But you know, one of the articles I was reading about it was like, well, it backs writers into a corner because you can't write sequels. And you did.
Yeah.
Your hero goes on his journey and he's, ends in a pretty good place. And then you went, oh, I'm going to write a sequel. I'll just pick him up, drop him into a completely new scenario that needs a completely different set of skills. And I've got a sequel.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, again, going back to Tad
Mhm.
Williams and his very long series of books. Not for everyone, admittedly, but it's probably one of the best modern pieces of fantasy that I've read in a
Mhm.
very long time. And it's nothing but it is a classic
Mhm.
hero's journey. It just happens to be a classic hero's journey that takes part over several thousand
Yeah.
pages. And it also has a sequel that is equally as long. It can be as long as you want.
Mhm.
I'm not comparing myself to Ted Williams or any other author that I've mentioned, but there's always a chance in there. I mean, a very popular series up until shortly, anyway, because the author is taking forever in the final book, is the Red Rising series, is a hero's journey that just keeps expanding in scope and
Mhm.
depth. And also, I cannot speak of a series anymore that's improved every single time they've done it, other
Okay.
than that one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anything about the author, but I do know that his writing has it's probably been the best obvious improvement I've ever seen from an author on a book by book basis.
Mhm.
And it's nothing but a giant hero's journey
Yeah.
that expands in scope and narrative and depth, and it gets better every time. Wildly over the top. And I always tell people like the first book is bad. Just thankfully it's also only like 300 pages. You'll be fine. Just get through it and move on. It's so good from here on out, though.
Yeah, and it's good he's had that opportunity.
And you could see why he ended up
Mhm.
there. I mean,
Yeah.
the first book reads like fanfic of the Hunger Games for a lesser extent,
Oh.
but the first book is like pulpy
Mhm.
schlock, and I say that not as an insult. I love me some pulpy schlock.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
It's wonderful. The book is not
Mhm.
wonderful, but it's not like repulsively bad. It's still fine.
Yeah.
And it's only again 300 pages. It's written at like a high school
Mhm.
level. You'll
Yeah.
be fine. And for the door that it opens the rest of the series, I think it's one of the better hero's journeys written in the last
Yeah.
20 years. Easy. But every time, like there's an original trilogy, it's very good. They need a break. Now he's doing it. I don't even know how many other books.
Mhm.
I think it's going to complete at 7 total, but the seventh one is. I'm not saying it's George R. R. Martin time or anything, but like it's certainly late.
Yeah.
But again, any trope can be turned on its head or just done all over again
Mhm.
very, very well if you figure out a way to do it. It's all up to the quality of the
Yeah.
author.
And, I think you could always find your way to write yourself out of a corner.
Some people can.
Mhm.
Some people definitely cannot.
Mm.
You can see that in a few modern authors,
Yeah.
which unfortunately is George Martin is
Yeah.
one of them. Patrick Rothfuss comes to mind
Mhm.
as another that. I mean, there's a lot of other shit going on Patrick Rothfuss, but yeah, and unfortunately, it's also very, very
Yeah.
stressful. And some authors don't necessarily write themselves into a corner, but the process itself breaks them down mentally, and they have
Yeah.
to stop writing, which has happened to one of my favorites. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
maybe the authors that write themselves into a corner and just kind of say, "I guess I'm done."
Mhm.
Maybe that's the right choice sometimes.
Yeah. Maybe. Maybe. I mean, I think you'd struggle to write a fourth in the Prisoner's Dilemma series that comes after it. I mean, nothing's impossible, but it would
I
probably be Next Generation or.
Yeah, I think in that timeline it would definitely be done. In the back of my head, I've always been like, well, I want to do a
Mhm.
prequel about Mars or something like
That
that.
would be cool. That would work.
Yeah, but now I'm just so far
Mhm.
past that in writing
Yeah.
other stuff. I think now any book I wrote in that universe would just kind of be like something of an
Yeah.
Easter egg of like, oh, it's connected to this other series. This is very loosely. You don't even have to
Mhm.
read them because it's been so long. It's not like it got a movie deal or anything where everybody's clamoring for a prequel. Do you know what I mean?
Would be nice.
It would be fun. I
Mhm.
like that world a
Yeah.
lot. I definitely I'm working on my first fantasy novel now.
Mhm.
I mean, I mostly read science fiction. I'm finally finishing the Expanse series after I don't even know
Mhm.
how long, and the Sun Eater series, which is much longer.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Sun Eater is quite good.
Mhm.
It's similar to like say Red
Mhm.
Rising. The first book is a bit of a slog, but it opens up a lot since then. It's really good science
Mhm.
fantasy. I think he does it very well. I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce the guy's last name, so but it's very, very good. The Expanse is a classic, but because I consume so much more science fiction than anything else, I was on a fantasy kick for like 3 years,
Mhm.
but it always makes me want to write more science fiction.
Mhm.
Always. And now maybe I'm a better writer, so I can make something even better. But maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've definitely grown as a writer over the course of the stuff that I've read, at least. Which, can I mention that I've read an early draft of your next one?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I think you're definitely capturing some of that emotional stuff that you were talking about earlier really well in that draft. And also, it's a fantasy novel, but it's also quite rooted in history.
Yeah, I like writing. I guess the term people use is low fantasy.
Hmm.
I really liked a specific subgenre called gunpowder fantasy.
Hmm.
Sometimes called like flintlock fantasy. There's really not a lot of it out there, unfortunately. Easily one of the best series. It's called Thousand Names by Django
Hmm.
Wexler. One of my favorite series of novels ever written. There's a few other ones like Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Man, this genre is thin,
Hmm.
and it's quite normal for them to stick to almost like an alternative fantasy, but
Mhm.
not quite. Very low fantasy. So there is magic, but it's not like wizards are flying around on dragons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't enjoy that
Mhm.
kind of fantasy, but I don't think I could write it. I don't think you're ever going to catch me writing books about dragons. I just don't think I'm capable of it. But I really like to keep it very grounded. And it's in editing now. I have no idea how long that process is going to take. Thoughts and prayers to my editor.
It's always a journey editing a book.
Yeah, there's a reason why I've never been an editor.
Mhm.
I will say that's another thing that I don't know how editors deal with exactly,
Mhm.
and that is some authors are just assholes.
Mm.
They don't move on anything, and I generally, obviously, it's me saying this, so believe me
Mhm.
if you want. I generally listen to my editors like 9 times
Mhm.
out of 10. Like, well, whatever, you're the boss here, man.
Mhm.
I think I've only ever put my foot down once, and it was because an editor just did not understand why I wrote a scene in a book to be disgusting in a kind of way.
Mhm.
Like, oh, this is horrible. I don't even want to read it. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
They really didn't get that. That's the only time, like, look, I'm not deleting it. Like, I'm not backing down on this one.
Yeah.
But then there's the authors that are so powerful and popular, they can just refuse to listen to publishers and editors, and they'll just still put out stuff.
And usually their books are worse for it.
Oh, every time. Every time. When a popular author gets to the point that they no longer have to listen to anyone, their books are always worse.
Yep.
It's the same thing as like every comedian is worse once they get rich.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that because like poor people are funny or whatever, or like, you know, being in a van makes you funnier, but like it warps your sense of reality
Yeah.
to be that successful. And it just doesn't work. Or I've heard other situations where like someone married their editor.
Oh God, no.
Like, oh, that's definitely not going to work.
No, that's unwise, I would say.
Horrible fucking idea. I cannot imagine a worse way to either A, write a terrible book, and B, get a divorce at the exact same time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, people have accused Brandon Sanderson of not listening to his editors. I don't know what I think about that because I've heard he's just a sweetheart of a man. So he's like a really nice guy.
Mhm.
But obviously, then there's, you know, Patrick Rothfuss, whose editor legitimately has no idea what he's doing in a day-to-day business. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It goes in every direction.
So if your editor came back to you and said, okay, you need to remove a third of this book, what would your thoughts be?
I would need a pretty good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was a good enough reason to me, I mean, that's where the negotiation starts, right?
Yeah.
Because I have been told a book needs to be cut down. And one time, I'm guilty of this in one way, where after I published my first book through an indie publisher, the first book went very, very well.
Mhm.
And I think the editor and the publishing company trusted me too much.
Uh-huh.
So when I turned in my draft for my second book, they kind of let me go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, the last book turned out so well. I'm like, well, you seem to forget that the reason why it turned out so well is because you helped me edit it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of allowed to do whatever I wanted. I mean, I still think the bones of that book is good.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it could have been tightened up more. And because I didn't have anybody telling me that, I was like, well, it must be good.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that it's like a middling independent author.
Mhm.
You know, I can't imagine what it's like to have like rich guy author money like the people we've been talking about have, or you make millions of dollars
Mhm.
a year. It would really depend on, I need a good reason for it
Mhm.
and why that reasoning is taking place. Like, is it just not good? Is the book bloated? Do I need to save this for a sequel? Is it just literal trash?
Mhm.
I'm normally quite compliant with reason. I am still always asking why.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
Yeah, if because I want to know why they want to cut it, because like I said, like if I didn't constantly ask why, the editor who wanted to cut a part that just made them feel gross
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have told me that, and I would have thought it was just bad.
Mhm.
And I mean, I did listen to them through most of the other editing process. Like, no, that's right, that's not good. Like, I need pushback. You need a back and forth. When they're like, oh, we should cut this part, I was like, why? Like,
Mhm.
it makes me feel bad on the inside. Like, that's
Yeah.
why it's there.
Yeah.
they have my why, I have their why, and we come up with some negotiation in
Mhm.
the middle. Though sometimes it is okay for an author to just be like, absolutely not. I'm
Mhm.
not doing that.
Yeah.
And especially if they're missing the mark on what you're going for. There's a different story entirely if the author is missing their mark.
Mhm.
That's a different problem. But if the editor is not on board with what you have on page, then you need to have a different conversation. You probably need a different editor.
Yeah. I also wanted to briefly touch on just your knowledge of history and how that informs your writing.
Mhm.
Because obviously, your new one has a lot in common with the Armenian genocide.
Yeah.
And there were a few minutes when I was reading the draft where I was like, really? Are people really, really that awful? And then I listened to your podcast episodes about the genocide and went, oh, yep, no, that's straight from real life.
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah, I was inspired by an author named R.F. King, I believe her surname is.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote a trilogy that kind of graphically depicts the events of Nan King
Mm-hmm.
because her family suffered through that.
Yeah.
And I read it a very long time ago. I mean, I know a lot of people have their opinions on the trilogy. I think it was okay. It was her first book,
Mm-hmm.
but the part of it is like, wow, you can do this with these horribly traumatic parts of history. Like, for example, I already talked about Django Wexler's series.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much a magical version of the French Revolution, as is Brian McLennan's series was also very good. That's also kind of a redo of the French Revolution. Doing those big historical epics through this idea of fantasy is not unknown,
Mm-hmm.
but what is generally skipped over is the horrific things that we've done to each other.
Yeah.
And obviously, of course, my family was mostly murdered during the genocide. And we're in an era now where you can write these pieces where the main character isn't from some weird pseudo European country and people are okay with it. Publishers won't reject.
Mm-hmm.
You can write about fantasy, Persia, Far East, Southeast Asia, whatever, and it's people aren't looking at it like you have the plague.
Yeah.
So it really does open the doors a bit more to explore our histories through the scope of fantasy, because not everybody's going to sit down and read, Burning Tigress or whatever for 500 pages, and I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Like, who's just going to sit down and crack a history book? I do it, but I'm fucking weird and I'm a historian. Like, this is not like table reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you finally have an opening in both the publisher side and public consumption, you can tell your story finally in some capacity, obviously, in some way that makes it, I mean, entertaining isn't the word, but consumable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very nice. I mean, I know that still publishers, editors, agents, and audiences are not as accepting towards some people than they are others. This new age is only available for some of us. And I understand that I'm privileged in the way of doing it, because people will look at me and still think I'm white. But you got to shoot your shot.
Yep. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I couldn't imagine pitching this idea 10 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Things have changed. Publishing as an industry is significantly worse than it was 10 years ago. But now you can at least get your manuscript looked at when it's talking about stuff like that. And I think it's almost the same reason as why we do our show, Lions, is because we want to take these events and make them consumable so people will learn from them,
Yeah.
hopefully. And if you take such a traumatic event, you turn it into a narrative story arc, which is not obviously not the first time anybody has done this. It's the first time anybody done with the Armenian genocide, not counting a very bad movie once.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you'll make people curious. Maybe they won't learn anything. That's fine too. But maybe they'll know something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. And you have quite a bit of experience about taking some fairly grim stories and finding a narrative arc to make it digestible, but B, sometimes being able to laugh at some of the idiots in it, which gives you a little bit of relief here or there.
That's one thing I can always rely on, and that's no matter what horrible thing I'm talking about, there's always one idiot nearby to point and laugh at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we need that every now and then, someone to point and laugh at.
needed now more than ever.
Yep. Well, that's at least a slightly upbeat place to wind up. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a great chat. I have to get you to come back and talk about other stories at some point. And do you want to plug your show again up the end?
Yeah, sure. I am the host of Lines Up by Donkeys podcast. You can find us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. And you can find any of my science fiction anywhere you buy books. Just look up my name.
Yeah, I'll pop links in the show notes as always. And thinking about doing a bookshop.org storefront. So maybe I'll list them all there.
No, that'd be cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And listen to Lions if you don't already. Thanks everyone for listening.